right, we're going to start right into this. You are a person that is busy doing a lot of different things. And so I want to know, how does this work for you? How do you prioritize self-care in your life and what it looks like for you?
Yeah. So I guess I don't know, with a lot of the work that I'm doing, I just try and take time for me. I guess kind of schedule it too. It's like part of the schedule. Like it's also part of the work. I started following this, like this group and this Instagram account called the Nap Ministry, which is really good. And they prioritize, just like what rest means, especially in the Black community, and how it's also a form of resistance and rebellion. And like, it's something that it's really needed. And a lot of people don't think about it. I remember there was this one time I was listening to a talk that Steve Harvey was doing, and how he was talking about, like, if you sleep 8 hours a day, then you've slept a third of your life away. And I mean, it's almost like that's what's needed. It's part of like surviving, because if you don't sleep that time, you won't be here anyway. So it's a big portion. So I just kind of prioritize that and just think like I have to go home at this time. And I think just timing stuff out, like I have this much time to do this. I have this much time scheduled out for this. So it's like marking down those hours. So then you see like, oh, I spent so much time doing this. So I need to spend time doing something else as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to keep fresh, just to refresh. I'm going to go back real quick because I want to introduce Danielle by her character traits. And I jumped ahead. So she is artistic, she is creative, she is courageous, and she is innovative. And that's just going to come out as we have this conversation today. So thank you so much for helping me with that. Confidently setting boundaries. And what I mean by that is, kind of what you let in, what you let out, who you listen to, because you're doing some really frontline work here where there's a lot of voices, around you. How do you set those boundaries of like, all right, that's not healthy. I need to create some, because I would imagine that's really important in what you do in order to just stay fresh and not become discouraged even.
Yeah, I guess I just have to look at it like sometimes it's just good to listen to everybody. I guess sometimes people, and sometimes I'll just like write people off, but I guess just being able to listen to everyone, that's a form of leadership. But even though you listen to everyone doesn't mean that you have to take that advice. So I guess just thinking about like what's most important to myself and then what's most important to the community, and keeping that like in the front of my mind always, like, we have this community and you have other people. So you just have to think about like, even though it might not be important to me, like how would someone else feel? So I always think about like 3 other important people, like how would they feel with the situation? So, I mean, you can always take advice from people. And I guess just having moments where, like, if you're able to just to think about the situation, not just to jump ahead with your ideas and thoughts. So I guess having that sense of like thinking about something, considering other people's feelings and emotions and thoughts and ideas. So I guess sometimes it's harder. I guess we all make mistakes. So sometimes you won't pick the right decision, and you just use that as a learning process and something to grow from.
Absolutely. Because I think sometimes we don't know that a boundary has been violated until it's been violated. And then we're like, oh, okay, I've got to put some different parameters around that. But also that willingness to listen, and doing so with empathy, and take, and then deciding, okay, thank you so much. That goes in, and that, and that goes out. And you can decide that. I think that what I've learned in my ripe old middle age here is that I can be empathetic and respectful and kind when someone offers something up. That doesn't mean I have to listen to it, but I don't have to be rude about it either. But so finding that balance of all of that. Taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. What has been your experience? Because I have learned that those things are connected. If you are not taking care of that, and I know that's not something that's talked about amongst women, and it's definitely not something that's talked about amongst Black women, because there's so much asked generationally all the time of Black women and upholding communities, and that the emotional toll shows up. The stats are out there. The stats show in breast cancer, in heart situations, health for Black women versus white women and other women, it's higher. And I have to believe it has to do with the emotional toll. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I understand, being a woman, how hard it can be sometimes, and the emotional toll, and how it's interconnected with physical and mental. And I think a lot of people will separate the two, or just kind of disregard the emotional factor and the emotional tolls that go on. But I definitely see it within the community. I feel like it's gotten a lot better than how it has historically and in the past, but it's just, I guess, something that we almost have to deal with. And I guess, there's a lot of times where it's this myth of being the angry Black woman, or being too soft. And I think times where it's there was people don't want to be seen as this angry woman, that was almost worse than actually having that. Cause it's you can display that anger. It doesn't mean that you're acting on it, but people also have emotions. They can be soft and they can also be angry. But when we just disregard those feelings of discomfort and anger and sadness, it does nothing to help. So it's better now that I see a lot of women that are yeah, I'm still this angry woman. I'm so mad, because then it's you almost get run over and pushed to the side, and it's your feelings get disregarded. And I think there's a big misconception that a lot of men they're they don't really have emotions, and it's women that have more emotions. But I feel sometimes it's almost the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost they have the same issues as well. It's just they don't display it the same way, or they keep it bottled up, which is, it's just going to be worse for us, because we don't have the same access to healthcare. And a lot of women are disregarded when it comes to, feelings and emotions, especially in hospitals, clinics, around doctors. So it's just worse for us, because then it's the after effect. It doesn't come out the same if we were, seen as men. So it's.
Yeah. And that's a very good point. And it's not good for anybody, because the expectations that have been put into play, or at the culture and all of these pieces, racism, all these pieces have put into play, aren't healthy for either, because the men feel like they can't, so they bottle up, and it shows up in different ways. The women feel like they're not heard, and so their frustration, and then it manifests itself. It manifests itself in our physical health. There's got to be a way to work these things out, work them through our body, feel heard. And in the process of that, I love that you mentioned the NAP ministry earlier, because that making space to rest, because I think it feels like we have to fight this 24/7 or nothing will ever get done. But you can't operate like that for very long. You burn out, and it takes a toll on your physical health. So I love that came up with that piece, and just talking about these things more. There's a whole other initiative through the Loveland Foundation, where they pay for mental health specifically for Black women through the fundraising that's done with that. And just talking about these things more, because to be fresh for the battle and to be the best we can be, the self-care has to go into place, because again, so many statistics out there. And we're talking about it, but it's got, and I don't have to tell you, it's got a long way to go, but we've got to continue this conversation, and there's got to be more platforms for this to be no, this is how we're going to be the most effective, and getting, the medical facilities and the care to be realized, okay, everybody needs to get on board here, because right now you're just enabling and contributing to the problem. But I'm glad that we're starting to at least have the conversations, and hopefully putting tools into place that, yes, you feel empowered to do the things that you need to do for your own self, for your own best interest.
Yeah. And I think that relates to a lot of burnout too. It's people feel this need to continue working. And I think with COVID, they're saying this is a time for you to start your business. This is a time to do all of this. And people are just feeling burnout and overworked, even though there was less going on. So
yeah, absolutely. How can we support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. And what I mean by that is going out there and knowing that we have a voice, putting that voice to use, and quit apologizing for everything. We say sorry, women in general say sorry all the time for things that have nothing to do with them. And also, and I think that you have done a really great job with your launch of East Lubbock Art House of living unapologetically, of like, this is what we're going to do. This is what's needed. I'm going to speak truth to these things. Talk about that.
Yeah, I guess it's just, I just keep doing stuff. I can always say sorry too. But I guess just doing things and just, I mean, you can always say sorry after. So just do it and not think about the consequence. I guess there's either the sense that you don't do it because you don't want to feel like you have to feel remorse or apologize for something, or either you're doing it and then you're like, you can always apologize after.
Yeah.
That's the way I think of it. But I guess just sometimes there's no need for an apology. There's, this has to happen and we can't really apologize, or there is no need for apology. And then when I think about it relating to like East Lubbock Art House and the community, and I saw a movie recently where one of the main characters just asked this question and he was like, well, who created the hood? And it was like asking this question of like, do we need to apologize for anything that's going on? And the sense was that it's not created by the people. It wasn't created by artists or people coming in. It's created by the city. So in a sense, it's a source that created a problem within itself. So it's nothing that people can apologize. So I think of it relating to the art house and situations that go on in the city and other segregated neighborhoods. It's nothing that someone can apologize for, that the direct cause and the people who are neglected and most impacted by it, they're the ones that can't say sorry because it was nothing put on them. And
yeah,
now it's not even a time for anyone to say, we're sorry. It's more of a time to focus on like what can be done, because the sorry won't do anything now. It's, because even if that were to happen, it's almost like people aren't looking for a sorry right now. They're just looking for you to be accountable.
Yes.
And I think sometimes that's, besides saying I'm sorry, it's people are just looking for you to just make up for what happened and, just be there and have open ears, just be able to listen and, just be accountable. So I think that means a lot more than saying I'm sorry.
Yeah. Cause I'm sorry doesn't do anything. And it's okay. And it might make that person feel better, but it hasn't moved the needle on anything.
Yeah.
We can talk all day about who's at fault for what and get nothing done. You can show that you care by supporting and moving forward and being part of solutions. And I think that's a lot more valuable than 1,000 sorries, because there's no one single person that is responsible. It's a collection of decisions and time and history. But yeah, I really love that, what you said about that. Okay, let's be accountable and let's be a part of the solution and let's move this thing forward. The importance of setting and coming back to your why in everything you do. So talk about, you definitely had a why around you're moving to Lubbock. You're not from here. You moved to Lubbock and you had specific things you were going after. Talk about the why, what inspired you and how that keeps you focused on the things, because you get pulled in a lot of different directions. You get asked to do a lot of different things. So what helps you decide where your yeses are and where your nos are, and how do you navigate that?
I guess I always say yes a lot too with stuff. But I guess
you have energy still.
I guess just looking at, I guess there's always a time where I'll try something for the first time. And then if it's not working out, then I won't do it again. But I guess just looking at like the mission and the reason people are doing something, and also just, how they take suggestions as well, or how their work ethic is really kind of like puts into play what's going on. And, a lot of times it's like, it's okay if somebody's getting paid for something, but it's how much work will they do? And I think a lot of times like seeing people's work and like if they're only like interested in doing something within a certain time limit or like hours, like if, they work this from like 9 to 5, but if something really needs to be done, or if people are willing to meet at like a time like 7 p.m., will they be able to adjust their schedule for that? Is really important too. But just looking at how people work and how when like things get to be really rough, I think that's really kind of like the tell all of like who that person is. And if like at that time, if they're overwhelmed, if, you know, they just break down, then it's just, you know, it's not a good sign. There's times when it's okay to break down, but when it's just that really, when people just really need to be
showing up.
Yeah. So I really kind of like, they'll show their true colors. So to see that, or when you just question someone and they, you know, become very defensive, it's, you know, it's okay to defend yourself and who you are. But a lot of times, like, you know, you don't have to defend yourself. It's, you know, if someone's going to appreciate or like you, they're going to do it. And if they don't, they don't. So it's, you know, but it's
those clear lines there too. So talk about when you decided to establish East Lubbock Art House, talk about what your why was behind that. Talk about what inspired that.
Yeah. So I guess the why, I'm always interested in art, and I always wanted to work in an art gallery, and like, that's always what I've been interested in. But then I also like working with, you know, other people, like, and then also making my own schedule. So where I can be able to interact with other people, but not just be so, I guess, almost bogged down with somebody else's schedule.
Yeah.
So I guess because I always feel like if I'm working for someone else, and I feel like it's so overwhelming, even though like I work so much now.
Yeah, you do. But I think that's, you brought up a good point, because you did it out of your authenticity. You identified the reasons why, and you're living out of that. When you're living that way versus for someone else where you don't have that kind of ability to make those decisions and have that control and power in terms of your schedule and how you spend your time, it feels different. You know, when you get to do what you love to do. And I think your generation, and my daughters are all in that same age group as you are, you all have decided we're not going to do things anymore that don't feel authentic and real to us. We are not going to put time into things and spaces that don't feel like they're true to who we are and what we care about. And I think that's a prime example of what you have done there. And so within that, when you go from that why work, you know, the time that you put in, it doesn't always feel like, not that you're not working hard, but it doesn't necessarily feel like work. It feels like something you're called to do. Is that, would you say this falls into that for you?
Yeah, I think that where it's like, I guess it's like when people say, like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like work, but it's good work. And I guess also I thought about it when I was like, I guess younger now, like I always had like really bad, like menstrual cramps. And then I've always felt like exhausted at times. So I always thought like, I feel like I need to have a job where I don't miss work. Cause then it's like, you have to defend yourself or
explain it,
you know, you have to prove. Yeah. And then I felt like it's always so hard to have to like explain that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, I feel like it would be better if I just don't have to explain it. I don't have to like go through the process of, you know, if someone doesn't understand it, it's like, you know, but now I can make up for those hours, like in those days that I miss out on doing stuff. And I just felt like, you know, because there's times like I worked at like a daycare and I felt like so bad one day. It was like the last day that I went into work there, and like, I was just like, I never should have went there, because I mean, now they're closed. And they were it was so rude. And I just felt like I just should have just stayed at home, because I walked to because it was a daycare close to where I went to college at, and I walked there too. And I just like did not feel good. And I got there and I was just like throwing up, and I was just like, why am I here for like $7?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think you hit on a good point too. And I talked about this with my editor and producer, Valencia, a few episodes ago, where we've got to change the narrative on how we talk about our cycles, where it's not something that feels like a burden. And she talked about that a lot. She's done a ton of research on how We can, start talking about the things, get to know those things, make it our friend as we get to know how it works in our bodies, but also take the taboo off of it. 50% of the people in the world have one. And there's so much shame and privacy built around it. And I'm like, I do not care anymore if it makes men feel uncomfortable. That's too bad. Because, and even just other women. And so just even that you felt compelled, I need a job where this doesn't have to be an issue, I think is an important thing to remember too, because we've got to take the taboo off those things. So women aren't feeling that way.
Yeah, I think that's so important because even working with other women, it's like sometimes people don't care. And I understand that, but I'm just like, if somebody doesn't feel good, and I think the biggest thing, like people didn't understand how like important that is too, with like working around other people. Like if someone says they don't feel good, like I don't think people understood that until COVID. Like if somebody doesn't feel good,
yeah,
they just probably shouldn't be here.
No, I mean, for all kinds of, for mental reasons, besides their physical health, just the mental and emotional. And it's just, it's not good for anybody. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Living out of your own expectations versus expectations of those around you. How do you manage that?
That's almost a hard one because I always feel like I'm trying to just like prove something to people, or I guess live up to an expectation, but I guess just sometimes you just can't do so.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, you just can't. I guess you just almost like you can't please everyone. So it's,
sure.
I guess I get that from my dad. Like he tries to do so much. So it's like, it's still that same thing of like trying to get everything done. And then my mom is just like almost the total opposite. But she still works really hard too, where it's like, if I can't do it, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm almost like, we can do it. Just keep going.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if I can't do it, I just can't do it. And people, I've also thought about it, like people will always, I guess, despite like what you might think, like no matter what you do, people are still going to have the same thoughts about you. If they appreciate you and they are considerate about you, they're always going to feel that same way.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be something big that changes their mind. So if they don't like you, they probably already have that same thought about you.
Yeah.
You're just trying to prove them wrong, or I guess just, I can't think of what the word is, but just trying to make up for their thoughts or change their mind. It's just going to make them think, worse about you. So,
yeah.
Then they're going to think you're just a people pleaser. So that's, it's, I guess, either which way, if they like you, they like you. And if they don't, they don't. So it's, you have to think about yourself first.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point there that we spend so much time in the world, and I think especially as women, trying to keep everyone around us happy and make sure we meet all the expectations of others. At the end of the day, they've already made a decision about you. And if they have expectations that they've put on you that are going to change, if you pull back and say, I can't do that anymore, then it wasn't an authentic relationship in the first place. Yeah. And so being able to, have those boundaries in place and just know that what you're doing is what you were built for. And again, we'd spend so much energy, but you're never going to make everybody happy. And it took me a lot of years to realize I'm spending a lot of time trying to make people happy. And with all that I'm doing, they're still not happy. So I'm not going to do this anymore. They've made their decision, and just releasing that control of, we cannot control other people. And it's not our responsibility to. It's our responsibility to be our best authentic selves. And I think that, I don't know. I think you do this better than you think you do, because I think you really do, from what I see from the outside, because I know you based on your work and our work relationship. I follow you on social media. I think you do a great job of saying truth, speaking truth, doing things that are authentically helpful to the community, and not, if you do lose sleep, it's not visible. Not losing sleep by, other people's feedback on that. I think you live pretty true to yourself. Do you see that in yourself, or is that something that's like, oh, okay, good?
Yeah, I guess I'm getting better at it.
It takes time. And
I guess just also like having other people around, like really like, because I had like another friend that really helped with that. Like, sometimes they would see like stuff when it was like, I guess not just people were using someone, but just, where it's like, you don't need to do that to make up for people. Like that should be something that they do too.
Sure.
But I always try and think about that, like there's so much work that myself and then I have other people do at the art house, and then to see sometimes where it's other people will just kind of want to, I guess, take from that work, or they won't try and do the same work. And I guess the main one is like people don't use Google. So it's like,
yeah,
people will definitely use you as like a resource for Google, where I could just Google something for them. And I mean, I find it would be almost quicker.
I am not your personal Google. Go use it yourself. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. But
it's, I guess, just having people like that around that kind of like will put stuff in check, and then I'm like, I'll think about it. But sometimes I'm just like, I just try and be nice to majority of people. But sometimes I guess we just have to, give people their own sense of like responsibility as well. So I have to think about like, can you do that? I guess it's like where like in some classrooms, like the teacher will say like, ask 3 before me, like ask 3 people before you ask me. Yeah. I think some people still like need that resource. Like they should like have 3 resources to look.
Yeah.
Before they ask someone else. So.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. And what I mean by that is we tend to want to just accept the fun stuff, the good stuff, and we kind of want to ignore the yucky stuff. But the reality is that makes us who we are. How do you feel about that? How do you navigate that? How does that work for you?
I guess you just have to kind of appreciate like all the different things that come in your life. I guess some stuff is like, it's not so good. And I guess some days it's like, oh, dang, this is really bad. But I also try and think of it as like, I take the good with the bad, the fun with the yucky, but I guess it's just life. And then I also have started to think like, everyone has privileges, and like we all have privileges. Like there's sometimes that there's some people that come to the art house and it's like, I mean, they have privileges as well, but it's like people who, they're not complaining about like, even physical or emotional, like challenges that they have. So we just have to think about like, those people aren't complaining. So it's, it's no reason to complain in front of them as well. Yeah. Because sometimes that's where people get their feelings hurt. It's like they do so much and they also have these less privileges, but they're still making it. It's, it's important to recognize what we have going on, but it's also important to recognize that, not everybody wants to hear people complain, which is, I guess what makes it like having the art house is like a safe space where we can, just come and we're all people. We all are just trying to, find someone to talk to, find someone to appreciate stuff, and just work towards a better community. So I guess just having that is like the main goal where, sometimes people will do that and it's like, they'll complain about stuff. And then there's other people that also are going through stuff. So it doesn't make anyone feel better. Yeah.
And it is life. And I like how you talked about the safe space where come here as you are, bring all your stuff. We're going to hang out together and we're going to do this. We're going to create and we're going to be a part of the solutions in this community, but not feeling like there's anything you have to hide or, anything you can't, bring with you. I think too, is just that safe space. And we have to create more of those safe spaces for people. Yeah. Cultivating healthy relationships with others. How does that work for you?
Boundaries are really important. And I guess sometimes like people will abuse those boundaries. And sometimes I felt like that's happened. Like, I feel like the more like sometimes people will feel that they can be comfortable with you, that, they feel like, I can just do whatever, like they don't really care anymore. So I guess we just have to work on that. It has to be something that like is set in place at the beginning, like when you meet someone or like a relationship is started. So I guess sometimes I have problems with that because I don't want to feel like, I guess like the person that's, overbearing or in charge so much, especially with like having other people work at the art house. I don't want it to feel like, oh, like I'm just like watching people.
Yeah.
or like I have all these like strict rules, but then I think also sometimes some people need those like boundaries.
Yeah.
Part of like their life and what they need structure wise. So like I also have to understand that some people like want that and actually need that. And, they don't want so much freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's some people that do want that freedom. And I guess everybody's not the same when it comes to leadership. So it's definitely like a learning process. Like some people need it, some people don't need it. And I guess that also comes with like training and just seeing how people work. So
sure. Well, and just navigating too, how do you deal with people that don't respect boundaries when you're trying to live out of your own to be the healthiest in your relationships and your interactions that you can be? I mean, I had a hard time. I had no boundaries for years. I mean, I came from this really like trauma bonds, codependent background. And so there were no boundaries in place. And I didn't even know what boundaries were. But then when I finally started putting them in place, it was really helpful. But it was tricky to communicate it to people that you didn't have them, nor did they want to have them. But I still needed them for my own health. So I think that's a lot of what you run into as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, having boundaries with people to where like you have your own time. Like I think a lot of times people will think like, oh, you always need to be around someone, or like you have this like fear of missing out. And like some people just want to be alone. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You got to have time to refill your cup so you can keep doing what you're doing. All right. What are some practices you use to process your emotions in a healthy way?
I guess just going back to what we just said, like taking time for yourself, I guess that's always like the big one, like having that, free time for yourself, as well as just doing things that you want to do. Yeah. And I guess making art has always been like that way to cope with stuff and just like express myself as well. Like, I guess just always just having that time for yourself. I spend time in the bathroom too, just like sometimes it's like your only free time.
And just like I know if I can go in here, I can get a few moments to take a breath and just re-energize or do what I need to do to kind of reset.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely the biggest ones.
Yeah. A lot of young moms in the world can relate to that as well. How do you live out? So the name of our podcast is Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers. How would you say you live that out? And we've kind of been talking about that throughout, but how would you kind of sum that up?
I guess I would sum that up as just kind of, being your genuine self. Mm-hmm. That's how I kind of felt it, like, this is like me actually recognizing and like becoming aware of like myself and my own feelings and, just being 100% there. Like sometimes I feel like we're like, just because you're alive doesn't mean that you're living. And, I guess that's like the biggest one. It's so important to just, actually recognize that like, I'm here and present and like, this is what it means for me to actually be here. Cause I feel like so often people are just like going about their lives and they're just like, like go to work, come home, go back to work.
Yeah.
And doing the same thing where it's like, there's no break in like whatever you're doing. And I think a lot of times, like even with COVID, and like different situations that happen, I think it happens because we don't take like a break and we don't actually like appreciate our lives. And it's, that's, I feel like a lot of times why like death will happen in a family. So that might be your only time that you were able to get off of work is like a funeral, which I like that was so important. And especially with my dad working so much, it's like, there needs to be like serious things that happen. I feel like it's not just a coincidence, but it's like, it's happens because you didn't take time to, actually rest. It's like, that's why stuff might happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love that. I mean, and I love what you said, just because you're alive doesn't mean you're living. That is, oh my gosh, so much truth to that. And we see it time and time again. My husband did a whole sleep study thing a few years ago at one of the universities he was working at. And the evidence that the lack of sleep has on your health is mind blowing. And most of us aren't getting enough of it. And the health things that it contributes to are crazy. I mean, heart health, cancer. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Autoimmune. I mean, there's so much. And it's like just because we don't get enough sleep, which is something we can control. But I think because we've decided, there's only so many hours a day, and depending on your socioeconomic situation too. I mean, some people don't have a choice. They've got to work a couple of jobs. So how do they find that space to feel like they're still living? Because I would also tell you that some of those people are the happiest people I know. Yeah. So it's not just, so it's also about your approach and how you find ways to live your life, enjoy your life, and find those spaces for yourself and what brings you joy. So what little time you have, what you're doing that brings you joy.
Yeah. I think it was this one time I saw this like meme or something where it was like, if you're at work and you go to the bathroom like for 10 minutes a day, then you've like after 6 days, you've like gotten paid for like 1 whole hour. So I think also having that, if you're like at work, I understand like having to keep going on and doing stuff and like the need for productivity, but it's just like, you need time for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's like people will guilt you into like, you have to keep working, but it's like,
you also got to take a breath or I think that's where I would say in our society, in our culture with capitalism, the big joke is kind of on the culture in terms of if you keep pushing and people are going to collapse at some point. If you just allow people to rest as they need to put self-care into play, for mental health to be important, for us all to be treated as the humans that we are without consideration of race, socioeconomic background, we would be such a more, ironically, productive society because we'd be living out of our best, healthiest selves as a whole group. And so it's like the joke's kind of on you because it's not sustainable.
It's not. Well, I mean, you can see it in any job, just people who keep working like that. And then it's just immediately they get burned out and it's like, they're not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It is amazing. It'll be interesting to see. We're talking about it, but it is kind of an irony that I see time and time again playing out. So we are coming down to our rapid fire at the end here before we wrap up. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Making art, cooking, writing, just watching movies, and I guess just going for a walk.
Yeah. It's amazing what a walk around the block can do, even just getting outside, taking a breath. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
I guess rested, accomplished, growth, I guess needed, and appreciated.
Really good. Really, really good. All right. Thank you so much for your time today. Again, podcast audience, you're going to want to know what Danielle does. So check out our show notes and our sources. Follow East Lubbock Art House on Instagram, on Facebook to find out what they're doing. They're doing amazing things in the community. She does art. She provides art supplies to kids and people that wouldn't necessarily be able to afford it. She has art classes. There's a community fridge that anybody can contribute to that's open to anyone that needs food to come to without question. She's working on expanding right now. This is the big thing. So her information in the show notes and in the sources is going to tell you how you can learn more about how you can contribute to them financially being able to do that. It's such an important cause. So Danielle will have all that information in there. And she's a difference maker. This woman's only in her 20s and she's making a difference. So 20 somethings out there, you can be difference makers. So she's a great inspiration for that. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add today before we wrap up?
I guess that's it. I guess just people get your rest and then turn around and go back to work.
Yeah. And find that thing that really inspires you, because I think that's what you've done so well is you found that thing that inspires you. It's authentically from you and you're making a difference. So thanks so much for your time today. Again, embracinglayers.com, at Embracing Layers. You have all the information you want to find out about Danielle.